The people who live to 100, centenarians, have one thing in common that almost nobody talks about. It's not their genetics, it's not their location, it's not even their diet exactly. It's the diversity of the bacteria living in their gut. And the data on this is now compelling enough that I run microbiome assessment on virtually every longevity patient I see. Here's why. I'm Dr. Trevor Turner, interventional sports and spine physician at Pravida Health in Atlanta. We're a longevity-focused practice, which means I spend a lot of time looking at data that most doctors never order. And one of the most underrated data sets in longevity medicine right now is the gut microbiome. A 2026 review in Biomedicine's called the gut microbiome, a key modulator of aging, influencing immune regulation, metabolic homeostasis, and neuroendocrine signaling. That's not a wellness blogger, that's peer-reviewed science. Today I want to break down what the evidence actually shows, why standard medicine isn't testing this, and what you can do about it, with or without a physician. Here's what happens to your gut microbiome as you age. Starting in your 30s and 40s, microbial diversity begins to decline. The beneficial species, the SCFA producers, the gut barrier maintainers, the anti-inflammatory regulators, start losing ground to pro-inflammatory opportunistic bacteria. By the time most people are in their 60s and 70s, the microbiome looks dramatically different from what it did in their 30s, unless they've been actively protecting it. Most people haven't. And here's the problem. Standard medicine doesn't track this at all. Your annual physical measures, your cholesterol, your blood sugar, maybe your CBC, nobody is measuring your Shannon Diversity Index. Nobody is looking at your SCFA production capacity or your gut barrier integrity. So dysbiosis quietly accumulates over years, and because it drives what researchers call inflammaging, that chronic, low-grade inflammation that underlies cardiovascular disease, neurodegeneration, metabolic disease, and cancer. By the time you see the downstream effects on your blood work, the process has been running for a decade. I had a 52-year-old entrepreneur come in last year. Sharp guy, runs 3 companies, works out 4 times a week. His standard labs looked fine, but his inflammatory markers were elevated, HSCRP of 3.4, IL-6 mildly elevated, and he was experiencing cognitive fog he attributed to just getting older. We ran a full microbiome panel. His gut was a disaster. Near complete absence of Akkermansia mucinophila, SCFA production genes severely depleted, gut barrier markers elevated. He wasn't just getting older. His gut was accelerating the process. Let me walk you through the data. The Centenarian Data, multiple independent cohort studies across Italy, China, Japan, and Estonia, have now converged on the same finding. People who live to 100 have more diverse gut microbiomes than their younger counterparts. A Chinese centenarian study found that their microbiome exhibited features similar to those of young adults, 20 to 44 years. Meaning they'd somehow maintained or restored youthful microbial ecology across a century of life. The specific bacteria that show up repeatedly in centenarians, Akkermansia muciniphila, Bifidobacterium, Christensenolacei, and Ruminococciceae. These are your gut barrier maintainers, your SCFA producers, your anti-inflammatory regulators. The inflammaging mechanism: when these beneficial bacteria decline, SCFA production drops. Butyrate, the primary fuel for colonocytes, becomes scarce. Gut barrier integrity weakens. Bacterial fragments, including lipopolysaccharide, LPS, translocate into systemic circulation. Your immune system reads LPS as an infection signal and activates. Not a full infection response, just a smoldering, chronic, low-level activation that never fully resolves. That's inflammaging, and it is directly linked to every major age-related disease. The gut-brain axis, a 2024 study in aged mice, showed that decreased gut SCFA levels directly correlated with elevated interleukin-1 beta and TNF-alpha in the brain cortex, inflammatory cytokines that impair neurogenesis and synaptic function. Your gut talks to your brain constantly, via the vagus nerve, via circulating metabolites, via the enteric nervous system, sometimes called the second brain, which contains more neurons than your spinal cord. When your gut microbiome is dysbiotic, the conversation it's sending to your brain is increase inflammation, reduce cognitive function, accelerate aging, the oral microbiome connection. One more piece. A December 2025 review in the Journal of Oral Microbiology established that the oral microbiome is significantly altered with aging and linked to frailty, neurodegeneration, and sarcopenia. Porphyromonas gingivalis, a periodontal pathogen, is now associated with accelerated biological aging and increased Alzheimer's risk. The state of your mouth is a window into your aging trajectory. This is why we sometimes assess oral and gut microbiome together. In our foundation membership, microbiome assessment is standard. And I want to be precise about what we're actually doing, because there's a big difference between what we do clinically and what you get from a consumer kit. Consumer kits like Viome or Zoe use 16SR RNA sequencing, which can identify bacteria to the genus level. That's useful directional data. What we use is shotgun metagenomic sequencing, which gives you species-level resolution and functional data. Meaning, we're not just asking which bacteria are present, but what are they producing? What metabolic pathways are active or suppressed? We measure Shannon Diversity Index, richness and evenness, SCFA production, gene capacity, gut barrier, integrity markers, and we layer that on top of your inflammatory markers, hormone panel, metabolic data, and genomics. Because the microbiome doesn't exist in isolation. It interacts with every other system we're measuring. Going back to that 52-year-old CEO, we rebuilt his microbiome over 6 months. Targeted fiber repletion based on his specific depleted taxa, a structured fermented food protocol, timed probiotic supplementation with strains chosen based on what was absent, sleep optimization. At 6 months, his Shannon Diversity Index had improved measurably. His HSCRP dropped from 3.4 to 1.1. His cognitive fog resolved. He told me it felt like someone had turned the lights back on. That's not placebo. That's biology responding to the right inputs. The gut microbiome is one of the most modifiable longevity levers you have. Unlike your genetics, you can actually change this meaningfully, measurably, within months. If you want to understand where your microbiome stands and what it's doing to your aging trajectory, the link to schedule a consultation at Pravida Health is in the description below. And if this was useful, subscribe. We put out new evidence-based content every week. No fluff, no supplements you don't need, just the data and what to do with it. See you next week.